I must submit to you this afternoon that personally I don't watch a whole lot of television because I don't have a whole lot of time. And the programs that are coming on television simply don't keep my interest. But there is one channel that I like, and I am an avid viewer when I have time, avid viewer of the Weather Channel. I really enjoy watching the documentaries and specials that come on the Weather Channel, particularly when they talk about the nature of storms. One thing that I've learned since I've been watching the Weather Channel is that for every season, there is a storm that will come up. There is a storm for springtime. There's a storm for summer. There's a storm for winter and a storm for the fall. However you look at it, storms certainly are inevitable. From hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, blizzards, tornadoes, cyclones, there are storms for every season. But it seems to be that is the case also in everyday life as well. That on our spiritual journeys, there are storms that we also must encounter. And that no matter what season we find ourselves in life, a storm is inevitable. A storm is unavoidable. And a storm is bound to happen sooner or later. Some of you know to be a fact that either you're in a storm right now, or perhaps you're just coming out of a storm, or maybe you're on your way into a storm. The truth of the matter is that storms come in our households, they come on our jobs, they affect us even in our ministries, and the nation as a whole is even experiencing a storm right now. We see that our economy is in trouble. We're dealing with a nation that is divided between red states and blue states. If it's not one thing, it's another. And sometimes we deal with bouts of unexpected sickness. This is what I identify as a storm. I want you to know that storms are not only inevitable, but storms do not discriminate. It doesn't matter what your last name is, or how much money you have in the bank, nor what side of the railroad track you reside in. Storms will come into your life. And I just came today to announce that with all of the great things that were read about me in my biographical sketch, you'll notice that I do not have a degree in meteorology. My degree is in theology, but God has given me a license to make a forecast that there is a storm on the ocean. And it's moving this way. And the songwriter said, if your soul is not anchored in Jesus, oh my God, you will surely drift away. Every now and then when you spend time in prayer and you spend time communing with God, he will give you a discernment where you can sense that a storm is on the horizon. Such was the case in our text on this afternoon. Jesus had just finished feeding a multitude of 5,000 men. That's not including the women and the children. And he sent his disciples to get into the boat and to travel over the lake Gennesaret to the other side. Isn't it funny how storms usually happen only after something good has occurred? Isn't it funny that after God has blessed, that's when the enemy starts to mess? Isn't it funny how things can be going so well in your life, and then you turn around the corner, here comes something out of the middle of nowhere that will attempt to blow your mind, to rob you of your joy, and to steal your praise. This is what I call a storm. I came to announce that a storm is defined as a disturbed state in the atmosphere. Storms occur when low pressure develops with a system of high pressure surrounding it, and this combination of opposing forces caused disturbances in the atmosphere. The text indicates that the disciples were smack dab in the middle of a storm. The text not only says that they were in a storm, but the wind was contrary to them. And I want to talk to somebody, just talk, I don't have to preach, I can just talk to you, to tell you that sometimes when you're on the way to do what God has commissioned you to do, that's when contrary winds will resist and fight against your progress. But I want you to know that's not the time to give up, nor is it the time to throw in the towel, but that's the time to press your way through. The text says the disciples were smack dab in the middle of a storm. But you'll note that this was not their first time being in a storm. You'll notice that in another chapter, you'll see that the first time when they were in the storm, Jesus was in the boat with them. But now when Jesus was in the boat with them the first time, he was asleep on a pillow in the hinder part of the boat. But now this time in the storm, they were alone. Understand, sometimes you have to go it by yourself because you should have learned a lesson the first time. Here is a storm for every season, and understand that there is a new devil for every new level in your life. Understand that God allowed them to go through that first storm to prepare them for this second experience. There's some things that you should have learned by this time, when you were this time last year, you should have learned how to handle it this time this year. There's some stuff that made you cry this time last year should not make you cry this year. Some stuff that blew your mind, knocked you off your rocker, caused you to almost go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs last year, you should be a little bit further along this year. The same stuff that the devil threw at you last year, you should have passed the test, given your testimony, and be ready to receive whatever's coming next. Is there anybody that knows what I'm talking about? I'm so glad that I may not be where I ought to be, but I'm so glad I'm not where I used to be. As I look back over my life and think things over, reminisce down memory lane, I can truly say that God has been good, that God has blessed my soul, and that God has brought me from a mighty long way. I guess I'm by myself in here, but there's so many storms that he has brought me out of. And I know I didn't do it by myself. If it had not been for his grace and his mercy. Here these disciples were suspended in the middle of where they had just come from and where they were on their way due to contrary winds and opposing forces of the storm. And they were having a royal fit. You've got to be able to discern what kind of storm you're in so you can know how to handle what's coming your way. This storm was the direct result of their obedience to Christ's command to go over to the other side. Now, some storms you bring on yourself, but some storms happen because you're doing what God called you to do. I wish I had half a witness right there. Everything is not the devil. Everything is not the enemy. Everything is not that old rascal. Sometimes we blame him for stuff that he didn't have anything to do with. Here we see Jesus knew that the storm was coming, but yet he knew that his boys were time enough to handle whatever was coming their way. And you know, some folk in church, they get on my last black nerve because they see it in the storm and they want to judge you as if to say something must be wrong or you wouldn't be in the mess that you're in. I hate to tell you, but sometimes the storms that we're in is not because we did something wrong. It could be because we did something right.